Okay, I'm making the Sophie size clutch today. It's for my daughter's iPad, and what you can see here is 2 exterior pieces, 2 interior pieces, 2 of the strips that will be the 1-inch wide strips on the bag, and 2 of the tie closures. And then here you can see I just have added a little bit of foam to the 2 exterior pieces. This is an example of what I did, just to the bottom half of it, basically to give some padding to the iPad where the iPad is going to be sitting. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing I'm making is the tie closures and the strips. So when I'm finished with this step, I should have 4 pieces, 2 of the 1/2 inch and 2 of the inch wide pieces. I'm going to do everything I say to do in the pattern, fold the edges into the center and then fold over again. And the only thing I'm not doing, because I'm using glitter canvas instead of regular quilting cotton, I'm not pressing these. I'm just pinning them and sewing them. I don't want to mess up the glitter side of this canvas. And because I didn't press them, I'm waiting to this point to fold in this one short edge, about 1/4 inch, so that it has a finished short edge when I'm finished with it. Since I'm not pressing, I didn't do this ahead of time. I'm just doing it now right before I sew it all together. And I'm close to finishing the first tie closure. I'm going to go ahead and do the second one off camera just to try to keep the video as brief as I can. And that's the first one done. Now we'll move on to the 1-inch wide strips. Same exact procedure for the 1-inch wide strips. You're going to make 2 of them. I'm only going to show 1 on camera, and you're folding the long edges into the center and then folding it over again. It'll be 1-inch wide. The only difference is you're not going to be folding one of the short edges in. Both of the short edges can remain raw edges. Okay, when you're finished with these, you'll have 2 1/2-inch tie closures and 2 1-inch strips. I went a little out of order than my pattern says to do, but truthfully, the order that you do these steps doesn't matter that much. I'm doing the exterior before I do the lining. So the next thing that I'm doing is I'm prepping the exterior pieces by putting the 1-inch strips in their place. So I've got the one that I'm doing where I'm putting on the bottom of the front exterior piece, and I've placed it, the bottom edge of the 1-inch strip is about 1.5 inches up from that bottom outer corner, and I'm just basting that into place now. And here it is, basted into place. And now I'm placing the other 1-inch strip on the other exterior, the back exterior, about 1.25 inches down from the top edge of that exterior piece, and I'm basting that into place. And this is what you should have when you finished prepping the 2 exterior pieces with the 1-inch strips. Okay, you should have marked a center mark at the top of your exterior pieces, and that will come in handy here. I'm putting my 2 tie closure pieces, 1 on either side of that center mark, just lining up the edges, the raw edges of the tie closure piece to the raw edge of the top of the exterior, and basting that into place. And this is what that looks like when you're finished. They're just hanging down from the center. Okay, now I'm taking both of my exterior pieces. I'm going to match them up right sides together, and I'm going to clip around to hold them in place. And now I'm just going to sew around, starting at the top right hand corner. I'm sewing down one side, and then down along the bottom edge, and then back up along the other side. And I think in the pattern I said to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. Okay, when you get down to the bottom corners, do not turn and sew into the corner. Don't sew the little area into the corner. Just sew straight down and then lift up like I am, and then start at the side going straight up. Don't sew into the corners. Leave them open. Okay, to box the two bottom corners, I'm going to stick my hand inside the bag, and I'm going to try to open up that bottom area so that I can pinch the corners down and match up the bottom seam with the side seam. I'm nesting those seams together so they line up really well. And then once I have them in place, I'll take a clip to keep them that way, and then sew across that corner the way I'm holding it right there. I'm putting that on the machine under the needle and sewing across that with my same 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, now I'm sewing my lining, and I think in the pattern I did the lining before the exterior, but again, it doesn't really matter. I'm doing it exactly the same way. I'm going to be sewing down one side, then the bottom, and then the other side. But the only difference is, there's two differences. One is I'm going to start with the 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to come in a little bit and turn it into a 3/8 inch seam allowance as I get down towards the bottom. And when I get to the bottom edge, I'm going to leave an opening, an area in the middle of it that I don't sew, so that I can use that opening to turn the entire bag when I'm finished. And then finally, as I'm finishing up on the other side of the bag and heading back up to the top on the other side, I'm going to go back to a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Here's where I'm stopping along the bottom, lifting up, not sewing, and then starting at the other side of the bottom edge again, so that now there's going to be a hole in the bottom of the bag. And here's what that hole looks like at the bottom. And now we're going to box the bottom corners of the lining in the exact same way we boxed the bottom corners of the exterior. And here I'm just turning the edges of that opening that I left outward, and I'm going to go press it so that they're just a little easier to stitch closed later on. Okay, so here's my exterior of the bag that I did. It is wrong side out. And here is my lining. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the lining and I'm going to turn it right side out. And I'm going to leave the exterior wrong side out. And I'm going to take the lining and put it inside the exterior so that they are right sides together. And then I'm going to match up the side seams on either side so that they are nested again, so that the side seams of the lining match perfectly with the side seam of the exterior bag. And I'm going to clip them in place all the way around the top of the bag so that nothing shifts. And I'm going to just sew around the entire top of the bag with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, just about finished sewing around, so when this comes off the machine, I'm going to use the opening in that lining to reach in and turn the entire bag right side out. And now I'm going to sew the opening in the lining closed. Okay, now I'm going to push the lining down into the inside of the bag, and I'm going to get ready to top stitch along the outside of the top of the bag using a long stitch length, like a 4. Before you do that, if you're using fabric like I am, you can take it to your iron and press it. It will make it easier to top stitch and probably look a little nicer. If you're using vinyl, I wouldn't suggest trying to press it with an iron without something at least in between the iron and the vinyl, some other pressing cloth to make sure you don't melt the vinyl. Okay, I'm going to go press around the top of this before I top stitch it. And now I'm just top stitching around the top edge of the bag, making sure to keep the everything out of the way except for that top edge that I'm stitching at the time. Stitching right over those tie closures that actually will give them an added bit of support, and going all the way around, back stitching when I start and back stitching when I stop at the same place. And now I'm at the step where I'm just sewing the 2 tie closures together about 3 inches away from the top of the bag, one on top of the other. I'm just sewing a straight line of stitching to hold them in place together. And that's how I've created my little pull-through loop for when I tie this to tie it shut, and I pull the ties through and keep it closed. And we are just about finished. If you have any questions, leave a comment and I will be happy to answer. You can find the pattern on my Etsy shop and let me know what you thought. Have a great day.